Okay, everybody. I see some of you are joining in, but we think we're going to get started now. Thank you all for joining our Yale Ciencia Academy workshop on mentoring up. This is a very important workshop for the program. As we all know, mentoring relationships are really one of the key critical pieces of graduate training. And we have with us two amazing, really national leaders in the field of graduate mentoring and mentoring in STEM in general. We have Dr. Christine Pfund, who is a researcher with the Wisconsin Center for Education Research at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Chris has a PhD in cellular and molecular biology from UW. And she's really served throughout her career in increasing positions of responsibility dedicated to research and practice of teaching and learning, helping to train future faculty to become more effective, and also in terms of studying the effects and developing training programs to develop better mentors. And to help students with their mentoring relationships. She currently is one of 5 principal investigators that was awarded a grant from the NIH to establish a National Research Mentoring Network, which you'll hear a little bit about. And in that capacity, she directs the National Mentor Training Course. So really, we have basically one of the top experts in this area. Finally, she's also director now of the newly established Center for the Improvement of Mentors' Experiences in Research at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. So join me in welcoming Chris. Thank you, Chris, for being with us and for running this workshop. And we also have with us Kermin Martínez Hernandez, Dr. Kermin Martínez Hernandez, who is an assistant professor of chemical education at St. John's Fisher College. Kermin, who's originally from Puerto Rico, specializes in scientific teaching and learning, training of science pre-service teachers, and in developing programs that support effective mentoring in science. Kermin is a master trainer facilitator with the National Research Mentoring Network, and he has conducted numerous mentoring trainings for both mentors and mentees throughout the U.S. and even in Puerto Rico. He's also been very involved with SACNA. He served in the SACNA's board of director from 2006 to 2009, and he currently serves as the chair of the SACNA's chapter committee. So if any of you are involved in SACNA's chapters at your university, you might have heard of Kermin. He has a PhD in chemical education from Purdue University and a master's and bachelor's in analytical chemistry and chemistry from the University of Puerto Rico, Mayagüez. So join me in welcoming Kermin as well. Thank you, Kermin, for being here. All right, so I will pass it on to Chris and Kermin so that they can explain a little bit of the technology that we're going to be using now. We're trying out a new system, and then we'll get started.
Great, thanks, Giovanna. And we have the slides up on the screen, so hopefully you can all see them. If you can't see the slides, please let us know in the chat window. And then as people are speaking, you'll see some of the video pictures at the very bottom of your screen. It's kind of a small icon. Later on, we'll move into breakout rooms where you'll all be able to see some of your colleagues in bigger pictures if their video is working. So we're using Blackboard Ultra, which I think is a first for some of you. It's actually a synchronous online platform that Kermin and I have taught in before and are currently actually teaching in this summer. Kermin's doing a lot of teaching in this platform, and so he's the pro. But as you know, we'll be using audio and video, as some of you've already tried. We'll also be asking you to volunteer to share things verbally by raising your hand, and that's the little icon with the arm raised at the bottom of the screen. We'll be using the chat room. Feel free to use the chat room at any time to let us know if you're having issues, you want to make a comment, you have a question. Kermin and I will be tag teaming today, and so when one of us is facilitating, the other person will be monitoring the chat room, and that will make sure that we see what you're saying and sharing and wanting to let us know about. We'll also be using emoticons, and we'll show you how to use those. Those are in the right-hand side of the chat window, so you can send smiley faces and thumbs up and all that kind of stuff. Also, if things just aren't working for you, you can, give us a thumbs down and let us know something's not right, and Giovanna's waving, so feel free to use those. In a space like this, we don't have the advantage of seeing your body language, and so we love emoticons because it helps us to know how you're feeling. Thanks, Marcos. We'll be using the whiteboard and a text tool, and we'll go over that in a couple minutes. We're going to have polls, so you can give us your feelings, and that will be done, and we can see how the voting breaks out. And then there'll be one point at which we go into breakout rooms, and there'll be about 4 of you in each room, and you'll have your videos on if those are working, and then be able to talk in small groups. All right, so as I said, we'll be doing hand raising and talking. Hopefully you've all seen the audio, video buttons and the hand raising. So just so that we get practice using this, we won't call on all of you. Everybody who sees the hand raising icon, why don't you go ahead and press it so that we know that you know where it is. Great. Couple more. All right, great. It looks like most of you are able to do that. If you had any trouble at all, and thanks folks for lowering your hands, or Kermin's doing that, not sure, then let us know in the chat window. And for those of you on the phone, obviously it's hard to engage with the raising of your hand and stuff, so please just go ahead and unmute yourself, even if it feels like you're interrupting. Don't worry about it. Just let us know if you want to interject something. I know a couple people had to come in on the phone, and I believe that Giovanna was able to send you the slides. So we'll try to remember to tell you what slide we're on. I can't promise we'll do that at every moment, but Kermin and I will do our best. So I'm moving on to slide number 4 now. And this is just to show you where the chat window is if you haven't found it, and also where the emoticons are. And thanks, Orlando. We love this platform. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of interaction. All right. So we're also going to be using the text tools. And that's going to be the little T that's circled here, and you can find it up in the left-hand corner of your screen, and we'll be using that a little bit later. All right, one thing that you'll want to do, because it's fun to see everybody's name, is you'll want to click on the participant window, which you can get to if you haven't already, it's this picture of these 2 little people with a 1, and that's just one person. And when you click on that, you can actually detach that panel using this little 3 bubbles from the chat window. And what that allows you to do is to have the chat window open and see all the chat, and be able to see everybody in the participant window, so you can see everybody's name and who has their mic on. So if you haven't done that, you can go ahead and do that. If you have any trouble doing that, go ahead and let us know in the chat window. But I think that's really nice to be able to see everybody's name and know who's in the session. So I'll just give you a second to try that and let us know if you have any trouble. All right, and again, at any time, let us know in the chat or by raising your hand. Great. All right. Awesome. I think that folks are letting us know that they were able to do that by raising their hand, but if instead you have a question, go ahead and click your microphone and your video, and come on audio and video and let us know what your question is. So Fabi, and I'm sorry if I'm not saying your name right, do you have a question, or you just wanted to let us know you had finished? Okay, you gave us an okay. Thanks for letting me know in the chat window. Okay. Wonderful. All right, so that's all the technology we're going to go over. And so again, let us know if you have any questions or issues. Today, we're going to really be focused on learning strategies you can use to expand and strengthen relationships with your mentors. And so many of you participated in a survey that Giovanna and Monica sent out, I believe, about maybe 6 weeks ago. And we use those results to decide what we would spend time on today. And so we're going to be focusing on how to maintain effective communication within your mentoring relationships. Assessing understanding, we're going to be engaging in some discussions and noting some resources on making sure your mentor understands what you're trying to convey. Sometimes you think you're being really clear, but it's just not working and you're not on the same page. And so what are some strategies to use to get on the same page? We're going to be talking about tools you can use to set and align expectations with your mentors. We're going to be having some exercises where you spend some time really thinking about what you need from your mentoring relationships right now. And then we're going to talk about increasing your network of mentors and some programs, including this one, as well as the National Research Mentoring Network, to expand your network of mentors. All right, so I'm going to give you a little overview of the kind of the framework we're using. So we're using a framework that has been coined Mentoring Up. It's actually adapted from a famous Harvard Business Review article called Managing Up, which was really an article about kind of how to get the best out of your boss. And that kind of framework has been used, and I've just put up some of the articles here that's been used for curriculum and articles about how mentees can really manage their relationships. And so these slides will be made available to all of you, and so these may be of interest. But we've been spending quite a bit of time working in this arena, and sometimes this is also referred to as mentee training. And I just want to give a shout out to Bruce Buren, who's at the Broad Institute. As some of the slides that we're using today, he was gracious enough to let us use because he had just done a session on Mentoring Up a couple of weeks ago at MIT. So Managing Up, as it was originally coined in the Harvard Business Review, was really kind of coined by this phrase, which some superiors spell out their expectations very explicitly, but most do not. Ultimately, the burden falls on the subordinate to discover what the boss's expectations are. And so this was really their whole premise, was what does the employee, or in their case, subordinate, and we don't talk about mentees or trainees being subordinate, but this, of course, was coming from the business literature. But really, if the burden is going to fall on the mentees to figure out the relationship and what the expectations are, what can they do to do that? How can they be proactive in the relationship? And so that doesn't mean the burden is ultimately on you as a mentee, but it does mean you play a really important role in making sure you get out of the relationship what you need. And so really Mentoring Up, which we coined from this, and really the person who coined this is a wonderful scholar named Steve Lee that Kermin and I have worked closely with, who's at the University of California, Irvine. And he has done some amazing work in this venue. And really what we want to talk about is helping you to move forward towards a shared purpose in your relationship, making sure you get what you need. Mentoring Up is about continually learning proactively to engage your advisor or mentor. So, and thinking the relationship changes over time. So how are you proactively making sure that your mentor and advisor know what you need? And it really requires you understanding yourself as well as the mentors and advisors you're working for. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are your styles? Those play into how you can navigate your relationship. It's not manipulating your advisor, and it's not false flattery. This is not about playing the game. This is not about like being manipulative and getting what you want. It's really about honoring the critical, powerful role you play in a relationship with your mentor. So what we really want to pose today is that we're really talking about reframing mentoring relationships and keeping in mind that it's going to be less about what your mentor gives to you and more about how the two of you can collaborate to meet your mutual needs. That it's a shared relationship. We've been in some of the meetings I've been at, we've started talking about co-piloting the relationship. Sometimes one person will be in charge, sometimes the other one will be in charge, sometimes you'll both be equal. And there is a power dynamic there, but you're really both responsible for its success. So the goals of Mentoring Up and where we're going to spend all our time today is thinking and assessing what you're seeking from your mentors, shifting from thinking about good and bad mentors to the core attributes of effective mentoring relationships, recognizing that effective mentoring is not just about mentors guiding mentees, but also mentees guiding their mentors, and that's Mentoring Up. Learning about some of the practical and theoretical research advances that guide the development of effective mentoring skills. We won't talk a lot about the research, but know that the activities and cases we dive into come from that research. And we're going to connect you with resources that'll help develop your skills as mentees. I will say right now that between Kermin and myself, you'll hear us use the word mentor advisor kind of interchangeably. Know that we mean your primary research mentors. And often people think about those as advisors as well. And we'll use the words mentee and trainee, meaning simply that you're in a process of being in the relationship and in the position of not as much power at this point. But of course, we want to convey to you, we want that position to be powerful. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Kermin to do some really fun introductory activities so we can get to know you better and you can get to know one another better.
Okay, thank you, Chris, and hola a todos. Well, we're going to start using some activities in here, and one of them are going to be by using the poll system. We just want to get to know you a little bit better and then kind of have some interaction. I know I feel kind of weird in this setting sometimes because you don't see each other, but we want to learn more about you and your mentoring relationship. So that's the whole point of today's that. So the first thing that I would like to do in the chat window, share where you're from and one of your hobbies. So I'm going to give you a minute or so for you to actually share where are you from and one of your hobbies. So using the chat window, thank you, Chris, for starting the chat. So again, ¿de dónde son y uno de sus hobbies? ¿Qué hacen fuera de hacer investigación y demás? So a lot of athletes, and that's nice. Hiking too. Here we come. It's okay to be a nerdy. It's okay too. Okay, I think that that's everybody there. So thank you for sharing that. As you can see, one of the ways that we're going to be using today is going to be the chat room. So we're going to ask some questions and then ask you to answer that in the chat. So please be as interactive as possible, you know, using the chat and showing us how you're feeling in there. So the next thing that I would like to do is we're going to start using the poll system. So I'm going to ask Chris to do the first poll for us. So the question is, how many people do you currently consider to be your mentor? So you're going to use the poll system, and so you're going to select 1 for 1, 2 for 2, 3, 4, and so on. So make sure that you answer that in the poll. I'm going to give you a couple minutes for that. So how many people do you currently consider to be your mentors? And yes, Giovanna and Monica, if you want to participate in the poll, please go ahead too, you know, so that way we have an idea. Cases that we're missing a couple of people. I'm gonna give you a couple more minutes. Okay, you can also use the chat room if you cannot see the poll. So how many people do you currently consider your mentor? Okay. I think that that's about it, Chris. So if you can close the poll. Okay, it looks like most people have between 2 and 3 mentors, which is actually great. So thank you for sharing that. It's really important for you to actually have mentors in different areas and having across even some discipline to actually move your career along. So that's great. So the next question that I will have for you using the poll system again is like, how satisfied are you with your current research mentoring relationship? And if you have more than one, think about your primary relationships. So you're going to say 1 for very unsatisfied, 2 for unsatisfied, 3 for neutral, 4 for satisfied, and 5 for very satisfied. Would like to also remind you that we're here in a safe space. We are not going to ask for any names of anybody. So it's like whatever it says in this platform, stay here. It's like when you go to Las Vegas, right? So everything stay in Las Vegas. So it's kind of the same concept in here. Sharimar, research mentoring as my advisor? Yes. Your mentoring relation with your main advisor or PI? Thank you, Corines. Las Vegas Moron. Thank you, Marco, for saying that. Okay, I think that that's about almost everybody. So it looks like most people are very satisfied, and we're going to try to help that person that is in the unsatisfied category. Hopefully, by the end of today, you will have some tools to improve that relationship with your mentor, so you can actually tackle that problem. And we will be also willing to help you out to try to address that problem. So Chris, if you can actually close the poll, that would be great. Okay, thank you. So the next question that I will have for you, now we're going to be using the whiteboard. You're going to be using the test tool, and you're going to see a T on the top of your screen that you can actually write on the whiteboard. So you're going to drag the T down to the whiteboard, and then you're going to answer this question. What role does your primary mentor plays right now that is particularly important to you? Make sure that you use the text option. And if you're having problem with that, feel free to use the chat window as well. Once again, what roles does your primary mentor plays right now that is particularly important to you? I give you a couple minutes for that. I'm going to paste the question in the chat room so you can actually read it. If you want to answer that question in the chat room, feel free to do that as well. And if you have any problem with any of the technology and how to use the text option in there, make sure that you let us know. You can move your textbook. Make sure that you hit enter when you're typing that. Okay. I see a lot of priorities helping get through different problems, efforts. Okay. Setting boundaries and push me when I need to be pushed. That's great. Francesca, thank you for sharing that. Okay. I'm gonna ask at least one volunteer that want to come in audio and video to kind of go over your comment in the whiteboard or in the chat. Is anybody willing to go on audio and video? Please raise your hand using the raise hand button in the middle of your screen. So raise your hand if you want to come up. So we want to make this as interactive as possible. So I will be calling out people. Okay, Priscilla, please go ahead. Thank you. Turn
Okay.
your audio and video if you have video. If you don't have video, that's fine.
Okay, everyone can hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you great.
Okay, good. So I just finished my first year. So my mentor is very important to me in terms of guiding me in my research because my top priority now is to define my research. So he's helpful in that way. That's the most important role that he has right now towards me.
Okay, and how he's helping you on that?
So he's given me a lot of ideas of different projects, and he's helped me understand them, and he's guiding me so that I can choose a project that best fits what I want to do in grad school.
Okay, thank you for sharing that.
No problem.
Anybody else want to share something about what you just said? Okay, Marcos, please go ahead.
So in my case, what I just wrote is that I think, and I just had that feeling, is that my mentor really cares about my success. So she's
Okay.
like really, really open, always asking what I'm doing, how everything's going. If I just taking classes, he's always asking. So she cares about what's happening with my career, and that feels great.
Okay, it seems that you have that communication going on between.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. I saw another person that just raised their hand and just disappeared. I was unable to actually get. Okay, Luz, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you great.
Okay, finally. So in my case, I want to do like a million things, you know me. So I'm always like, I want to do this, I want to do that. And he's like, okay, let's do this first. And then we go and do the other thing. And what really like also is he's busy all the time. He's a neurosurgeon here at Mayo Clinic. And he always finds the time to sit down with me every week to discuss the results. He's always available for submitting a letter of recommendation, like all the time. And I know how busy he is, so that's really important to me that he's there all the time, even if he's busy.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. So we're going to move on to the next question then. So we're going to go over what roles does your primary mentor play? Oh, sorry, that's the question. Write down a few words to describe a challenge that you're currently having with one of your mentors. So if you have any challenge with your current mentor, please write down what are those challenges that you're having. You don't have to say any names, just write down in a few words to describe a challenge. Time, okay? That's a very common one. Managing expectation. We will go over managing expectation in a little bit, so that's great. High sense of urgency in a different than mine. Okay, communication skill. That's a pretty interesting one. Getting ideas aligned together. Yep, we're going to go over aligning expectations and setting those goals later on today, so that's great. Communication skill. I want to focus my experiment in one thing and he wants another. Okay. It looks like somebody's having fun with the tool there, trying to draw lines and stuff. So
Oh, look like we lost a few. So one thing is if you hit the eraser, it erases everybody's comments. So if you can not hit the eraser, that will be awesome.
Yeah, we left some comments, some nice comments in there. So I will ask for one volunteer to actually share your challenge so we can continue moving on. Oh, that was Giovanna, huh? You're playing around with that. That's okay, don't worry. Any volunteer that want to share your challenge that you're having? It looks like most people were having issues with time. So I'm wondering if that was like time management or you're referring in terms of time and how long it's taking to do the experiment and how long have you been in graduate school or things like that. So if you can elaborate any of those that right time on the whiteboard, can you please come in audio and video so we can actually um, hear your challenge. I'm gonna give before I start calling people out. So anybody want to go over? And I know that sharing the challenge sometimes is difficult, but remember, we're here in a safe space, so we're here to help you out and kind to get to understand you better with this. This workshop is meant to help you out, so we need to hear from you. Okay, I'm gonna take the silent that anybody want to share that with me. So hopefully throughout the section you will be okay. Marcos, go ahead. Thank you for saving everybody here. Marcos, go ahead.
I will share something. I think
Okay.
that one of the biggest challenge I have is that I have some timeline expectations for as I trying to go like really not say fast, but I'm trying to keep up with the curriculum and all that stuff. And maybe there's a lot of work expected from me
Mm-hmm.
that I think it's like too much for the expectations I have for the time being in the PhD. So maybe that's a common problem that a lot of us will or have experienced, but I think that's the biggest challenge.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So correct me if I'm wrong. What I'm hearing is like you have your own expectation pretty high, and sometimes you're having issues managing your time. Is that correct?
No, it's that I have my expectations about graduating not so many years, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So and the thing is that the volume of work that is expected from me is just not in accordance with the timeline that I just put for myself, you know.
Yeah, that's a pretty hard one to manage. Okay, so but that's why having and hopefully at the end of the session today you're going to be able to get some tools so you can actually ask your advisor about those expectations. You know, and sometime I mean we can share more ideas at the end, but that is something that you need to make sure that you're on the same page with your advisor, so that way you have that clear mindset because I mean, in some cases, they're going to try to keep you there for as long as they can, so they need to get their stuff done too. Okay,
Yeah.
but thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
Okay, we're going to move on with the next section right here. And please, if you have any questions or if you need any clarification, please write those in the chat room. And I see that Priscilla also have the mentor expect you to graduate in 8 years instead of 5 or 6, for example. Yeah, that is a pretty common one. It should not be that way, but we will give you some tools to hopefully try to help you out with that. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to be doing is like we're going to be talking today about effective communication. And as you know, in order for you to have communication is a key element to any kind of relationship that you have. If you are with a boyfriend or a girlfriend, you need to communicate with that person, right? So the same thing is actually with your research advisor. If you cannot communicate with your research advisor, that relationship is not gonna flow. Okay, so you need to be able to find that kind of channel of communication that is working for both of you. So today we're going to give you some tools in order to help you out with that, and we're going to present some example of miscommunication. And it's really important that you find out what is going to be the best way for you to communicate. So some key points that you need to keep in mind when you are working with communicating with your advisor is like you need to find out what is the preferred medium for communication between you and your advisor, okay, or mentor. What is actually the preferred style of communication? If, for example, if the advisor prefers emails, if it prefers face-to-face, if it prefers, you know, a phone call. And sometimes the gap in age between you and your mentor can be significant, okay? So you need to try to adapt yourself. I know that your generation right now, you want to use Snapchat. Some advisors don't know how to use a Snapchat, you know, so you need to actually take that into account. You also need to, in order to make sure that you have an effective communication with your mentor, you need to make sure that you track and share the progress towards a goal. So having a set up goals is really important for you to have that communication going. And then and this is pretty important, that you are prepared for each meetings and having an agenda about what you want to discuss with that, what you want to get out of that meeting. So if you show up to your advisor office and then, hey, hi, how you doing? You know, I'm here, with no plan in mind, that's not going to look good on you. Okay, and you need to let your mentor know what are your needs. Okay, so it's really important for you to actually make sure that you establish that communication, but more importantly, what is going to be the style of communication with that. Okay, so we're going to move on, and we're going to start one of the tools that we use in this curriculum is the use of case study. So we're going to be able to use some case studies today to kind of like follow up with the discussion, and hopefully you're going to reflect, you may self-identify yourself with one of these case studies, and we're going to ask you to share your feedback in the chat room or in the whiteboard. Okay, so here are the instructions for the case study. We're going to listen the case. Somebody's going to read it aloud. We're going to be answering some poll questions, and then we're going to share our reaction to the case in the chat window or by raising your hands verbally. So I'm going to ask for the volunteer to read the case study first. Does anybody want to read the case study to everybody else? Come on, not all at the same time. Okay, Priscilla, go ahead.
Okay, so it says, you are second year and have been working on a new research project for the past 6 months. This particular project is part of a larger research study being led by a senior postdoc in your lab. Over the past 4 months, you have attended weekly meetings for the project, read the background research, conducted some experiments under the mentorship of the postdoc, and even contributed some fresh ideas for future experiments. Before one of your weekly meetings, you overhear your advisor telling the senior postdoc that he feels the manuscript is coming along nicely and should be ready to submit in the next few weeks. When you inquire about the manuscript, your advisor says that he and the senior postdoc are pushing the manuscript out the door as quickly as possible so the postdoc can include the submission on her resume when she begins applying for jobs next month. You see the manuscript lying on the desk and look at the title page. You are surprised that your name has not been included as an author. When the advisor sees you looking at the title page, he quickly says, "Don't worry, we included your name in the acknowledgments. We just don't have the time to include you in the writing this time. You will be an author soon enough."
Okay, thank you for reading that. So we're going to get into the discussion soon, but first thing that I'm going to do a poll before we actually get into the research questions. So let's put the poll right here. So Chris, if you can actually put the poll in there. Do you think that the graduate student should be an author on the manuscript? Please answer 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3, I will need more information. And if you choose C, or number 3, I'm sorry, you need to let us know what else you will need, okay? So you can do that by sharing that in the chat room. So please share what other information you will need. It looks like we have a bimodal distribution in here. A lot of people are saying 1 and 3. So some people believe that the grad student should be included in the manuscript, and some others mention that they need more information. Okay, great point, Andrew. If Andrew is mentioning in the chat room, if authorship was discussed in the beginning, how much he contributed to the research compared with the other? That's a great point. How much work she did, okay? Did she contribute the data for the manuscript? Okay. Okay, we will get to that case study in a little bit. So thank you for sharing that. Those are great points in there. So we're going to ask you another poll, okay? So the next question is, and whose responsibility is to raise the issues of authorship? So answer 1 for the PI, 2 for the first author, 3 for the co-authors, and 4 other contributors, and 5 all of the above. So if you can answer that. Okay, thank you for sharing that. I think that that's almost everybody in there. So it looks like most people think that all of the above are responsible for this. And we have Marcus that it says here that the PI should lead the discussion as the corresponding author. Great point. Okay. So now we're going to ask for reactions about the case study. And if you want to reread it, that's fine. We're going to be focusing now in the guiding questions. So I'm going to ask you to actually write down your reaction to these questions. So that the first question is, how should the graduate student respond? When should issues of authorship be discussed? And how could each of the player in this scenario have avoided this situation? So I'm gonna give you a couple of minutes so we can actually have this discussion going on. So you can use the chat room, and if make sure that you write the number 1, 2, or 3 in the chat room, so that way we know which question are you answering in the chat room. So I'm gonna give you a couple minutes in order for you that, and then I'm going to ask some participant to come live and then share your feedback. Once again, feel free to answer any of these questions and then just put the number next to it. So that way I'm going to paste the questions in the chat window. So that way you can actually see them and just let us know with a number 1, 2, or 3, which one are you answering. So that way we have an idea about that. So here are the questions right here in the chat room. So I'm going to share it with you so you can actually read them. Okay, Priscilla is sharing. I think the issues of authorship should be raised as soon as you start working on a project. Thank you for sharing that. Chris says that I think that the graduate student should at least be able to share the disappointment. That's a great point. Rebecca, thank you for sharing that. I think the student should sit with the PI and express the concern. Okay. Discuss the authorship before having the final manuscript. And many, maybe some of you already experienced this kind of situation while you were an undergrad. Okay. I'm gonna give you about 1 more minute or so you can actually share that before I start calling out people. I'm also wondering if any one of you have brought up any issues of authorship with your mentor at the start of the project, and if so, what did you say to the PIs? Anybody want to share that? Once again, if anyone has brought up authorship issues to your mentor at the start of your project, and if so, what did your mentor say? You can feel free to come on to the mic or share that in the chat room. Remember that this is also part of that communication, and setting up those goals or expectation at the beginning is really important for that. Okay, Shaimar says that mine set the rule of authorship here when I joined the lab. Okay.
I think, was that you, Shimara, that was trying to speak?
Yeah,
Okay.
because I'm not
Shimara
in the
has
chat,
something to
so
share.
I wanted to share like an experience I had with that issue.
Okay.
So now or
Yeah, go ahead.
should I
Go ahead.
wait?
No,
Okay.
go ahead. Go ahead.
So I had an issue with my mentor because he wanted to add the lab manager and high school student who was doing like a little small internship last summer while we were in the lab. So we did this project, and so the roles of them were simply like the high school student was just like we would tell her, okay, measure, I don't know, 5 grams or whatever. That's all she did. So she had no intellectual contribution to the work. And the lab manager was just there to provide us like with all the orders. She was just helping out as her lab manager duties should be. And so when we did the manuscript, I see that my mentor put both of them as authors, as co-authors of this manuscript. And I asked him vaguely, like not trying to let him notice, like what are the requirements that an author must have in order to be considered an author. And so he spoke to me about like, oh, an author should blah 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 blah, and then I didn't say anything, and I thought, okay, so what he says to me is making sense. So I really don't understand why he wants to include them in the manuscript. When I mean, I think I can. They don't deserve the author title, but more as an acknowledgement or helping a little bit around. And so what happened was that he noticed in my face, like I didn't say anything, but he kind of noticed my expression, and then he sent me an email asking me on a scale from 0 to 10, how much did I consider that they should be included in the paper. Of course, I responded like 1 or maybe even 2. And he did not take my response into consideration, and the paper was published with them as authors. And then a couple of months passed, and I never said anything. I kept my madness inside me. And then a couple of months passed, and that's when he spoke to me and said that he regrets the decision and that that I was right in the first place. And I don't know, I just wanted to share that experience. Maybe I should have spoken up, even though, I mean, he did ignore my email. So I'm not sure if maybe speaking up, talking to him more person-to-person, face-to-face interaction would have made any difference. But I don't know, I just wanted to share that experience.
Well, thank you for sharing that. But it looks like at the end of the day, he was actually able to, I think that you push him to reflect on that experience, and then he regret that. So I think that the learning that happened in him is also really important. That even though that you pointed out to him that you didn't want them to be authors in the paper, he ignored you at first, but then at the end he realized that he was wrong. So I think that it's pretty brave on you to actually call him out, and then ask that question. So I really applaud you for that. Sometimes we try to, ignore that and don't call that out. So that was really, really brave on you. But I think that at the end of the day, even though that they end up being in the as author, it was a lesson for him or her. I don't know if it was it's a male or female, but I think that at the end of the day, you make him think about it. So that was actually pretty great. So I will ask one or two people to share anything about this case study. So you can come into audio and video. I see a lot of comments and discussions in the chat room. So if Chris and Giovanna and Monica want to jump in and help me out with the chat as well, feel free to do so. But I will ask at least 2 or 3 people to share that. You can raise your hand, or I'm going to start selecting people randomly here.
Kermin, I just wanted to jump in and say that there's a lot of discussion about kind of bringing things up at the beginning, and but then some really important points about sometimes it's hard to know at the beginning of the project exactly how it's going to play out. And sometimes you have the best of intentions of writing, but then you don't end up writing, and then it gets confusing of whether or not you need to be writing in order to be an author or just contribute data. Sometimes that's journal dependent. And so I think it's a really important point that several people have brought up. It needs to be a revisited conversation. So if, it sounds like a lot of your PIs bring it up very early on a project, and that's great. And if they don't, that, we might encourage you to bring it up yourself and say, could we talk about authorship before I commit a lot of time to this? But that's not a done deal. It needs to be revisited, especially as more and more data gets constructed and papers start to be talked about.
Yeah, if I can add to that, I based on the comments, it seems like this is different depending on the lab or the field that you're working on. So, it seems like something that may be important to ask about when you're joining a lab, like how do you determine authorship for different projects? Because it seems like there's some variation depending on the PI and the field that you're working on. So that's something that's also important. And I don't think I certainly didn't think about this when I selected my lab.
Yeah, we normally, you normally will not because you don't know, but hopefully, this will give you some tool for you to actually sit down with your mentor and actually make clear those expectations in there. But Monica actually bring a really important point, when you're actually, and I think that you're past that stage in here, but that's something that you can actually share with others, colleagues, is to, when you're actually visiting the lab, having that questions, what is your rules for authorship is really important, and how you're going to consider my contribution in this research in terms of authorship. I'm going to be the first author, and in some lab that is actually the policy. Sometimes you help another grad student or postdoc and you are the second author, but then later on you're going to be your first author and other people are going to be helping you out. So that actually pretty dependent on different fields, so just keep that in mind. Anybody else want to share something about the case study or any concern that you have?
Kermin, I think Rebecca would like to share something.
Oh, Rebecca, go ahead.
Hi. So in my lab, my mentor has this rule that whenever you hand in an abstract for a meeting or a manuscript or anything, like you can't have the authors written in order. I mean, if I write it, I know I'm going to be the first author and he's going to be the last one. But he always says that since it's the PI, he sort of chooses in what order each author goes, but he always discusses with me. So in my lab, it's kind of a bit different from what other big labs would be because we're a small group. And we always know what each one of us is doing because we have lab meetings every week. So he's always up to date of who contributed what, like when did they do it, how much information they're contributing to the manuscript. But at the end of the day, he says that as a PI, it's his role to kind of be fair in how, like, what author goes where instead of
Okay,
me.
thank you for sharing that. Okay, Marcus is having a question in the chat room for all of us. It says, it will not feel right for the PI if the student is worrying so much about the authorship and the effort is attached to that. Yeah, and Chris is just asking that, so anybody want to jump in and then answer? We're getting the answers in the chat room, and I saw somebody else raising their hand, so, and it's just disappeared. That was Priscilla, I believe. No, Francesca. Oh, Francesca, go ahead. Yes, Francesca, go ahead in audio. Can you hear me, Francesca?
Can hear you, Francesca.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah,
Yes.
we can hear you now. Yep.
Can you hear me now? Okay,
Yes.
I just wanted to share the opposite story of a small lab. We're a prospective cohort. That means we're in the process of recruiting 720 women and then testing their babies 3 times during their first year of life. So that means a lot of visits. So I currently run a lot of participants that won't be in any of my papers and that I won't be, and that people are running participants that are for my papers. But again, I think, like everybody has mentioned over and over again, I think it's very important to have this clear from the beginning. Like I was told from the beginning, this is your project. However, you'll be helping, as you know, with everything because we have thousands of visits a year. And that's something that it was just clear to me from the beginning. So I think that's very important.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that, Francesca. So we're going to move on to the next slides right here. Just want to share with you that some of the barriers of the effective communication is like, don't make assumptions, you know. You have different communication styles and different personalities. Letting items linger too long without any discussions, you know, having the expectation, the imposter syndrome is another one, and lack of mentee cultural capital, you know, and cultural different in communication style. That can be also barriers of effective communication. So once again, communication is going to be the key for that. And some of the strategies that you can actually use for that is like what you can actually can start thinking about what you can do in order to be an active listener, you know, maintaining eye contact with the speaker, you know, avoid distraction, stop all other activities, paying attention to what he's saying, you know, summarizing that, and so on. Those are going to be key in order to maintain that effective communications. And here are some other points that I'm going to discuss pretty quickly here. So you need to make sure that you are actually listening for understanding. You have a direct expression on that, and you are questioning for information, receiving the feedback without being defensive about it, and then summarizing and checking back. So those are going to be key topics for you to have that effective communication. And I would like to point out that these slides are going to be shared with you so you can actually read them with more details in there. And the last thing is, like, you also need to make sure that in order to have that effective communication, there's going to be some cultural cues. I mean, some of us are Puerto Ricans, so obviously that's going to be a factor, you know, that may affect, you know, your relationship with your mentor. If your mentor is not Puerto Rican, he might need or she might need to know some background on how we are and so on. So just making sure that you highlight those cultural differences is going to be really important for you, you know, to make sure that you make that clear to your advisor. So once again, thank you for sharing that. We have a lot of discussion going on in the chat room, so thank you for your participation. I'm going to turn it back to Chris so she can actually continue in the next section. So thank you, everybody. I will be back in a little bit. Chris, are you there?
Yep, I just forgot to hit my mic.
Oh, okay. Just checking.
Thank you so much. We're just at the 1 hour mark, and we're going to continue talking about communication. But maybe before we jump into the next activity, maybe just take a couple seconds, stand up, stretch. We know you're sitting for a couple hours this morning, and so just want to have some good grounding of your body. So I'm going to totally stretch because I've been sitting for a while too. All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about how things are said and how things are heard. And so, and I want to spend some time talking about reflecting on what we hear and the lenses we use to interpret what we hear. And we're going to specifically be talking about things that might be heard verbally, but I think this is even more important when we interpret what's written, for example, in email. So keep that in mind as we're talking about the next section. So I have 4 statements up here on the screen. And so the first one is be on time to our group meetings from now on. The second one is how much longer do you think it'll take you to finish that manuscript draft? The third one is you will never get anywhere in this field if you don't dig in and stick with problems until you solve them. And the fourth one is I'm wondering if you've considered an alternate career path after this. So I just want you to read these to yourself. And I just, in the chat window, just want to know if you have any reaction to them. How do you hear them and what they mean to you? And you can just pick one that resonates with you, but what's your reaction to it? Okay, Priscilla says they sound like non-constructive criticism, okay. Other thoughts? If somebody said one of these statements or asked you one of these questions, how would you interpret it? Okay, so I see some interpretation. In one case, you know, feeling like might be motivating, like I'm working hard, I'll show them. And a couple others saying it makes me feel like I'm not doing a good job, or it might be a bit jarring. Naomi just saying like, okay, I agree, I need to be on time, kind of take it at face value. Luz saying like, wow, I'm hearing these and I'm thinking maybe it's time to get a different PI. Underestimating, yeah. Giovanna's hearing them. Number 1 is pretty direct. Okay, pretty fair. So number 2 that's interesting is pretty fair. Do you interpret someone asking you how long it'll take you to finish that draft as if they're telling you you're taking too long? Is that your immediate reaction to that? Okay, so yes and no. A lot of yeses, but a no as well. So feeling like, hearing that and feeling like, okay, it's taking me too long, and taking it very personally. But a lot depends on the context. So thanks for everyone for sharing that. Right, number 2, right, they genuinely just want to know how long. Okay, and a really interesting point, and I forgot who signed in as YCA 2017. I forgot your name. I know you typed it earlier, but it's way up in the chat window. Oh, Bianca. Yeah, Bianca, that's a really interesting point. Is they might be rushing. They might just really have a question but be rushing. Puerto Rican time, yeah. Okay, so I want to go to the next slide, and what I'd like you to think about now is, and you started to do this, is what do you think the intent of the statement was? So the first one, let's just say everybody kind of took it at face value, be on time. what do you think the intent of the statements are? Yeah, Bianca, did you want to share on audio?
Yeah, if I could.
Please.
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm. We can.
So I feel like sometimes it's not the best use of time to try to decode what exactly somebody is saying, because at least in my experiences with graduate school, as long as I do my work, I ask the right questions, there's clear communication, then there's really no use in trying to decode what sort of statements it means by, are you done yet? Or you should be on time now. Like, usually I'm going to take it at face value, because at least culturally for Americans, they'll try to be passive aggressive sometimes, but they'll never be past a certain point, if you understand what I mean, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So when they just say, like, be on time to our group meetings from now on, if they were to say something like that, I'd probably respond with, like, oh, thank you for that, or, typical niceties, right? I would even suggest, like, maybe if I'm not the only one, suggest if there are other time ranges or times or schedules in the day that work for anybody else. Because if this is a recurring issue, maybe we should reconsider. Or, like, what is an acceptable time for you? Like, is it okay if I'm 5 minutes late or 10 minutes late, et cetera, et cetera? Because, I mean, people just differ with their schedules. They have different things going on. But I think, just like as a general blanket statement, you can't take things personally in graduate school. Like, that's the one thing that I've kind of learned. If somebody has something to say, they'll say it, and they'll never really, like, let's be honest, they'll never actually say anything quite rude. And if they do, then I know that they'll probably be out of this business really soon. So for me, that comforts me, because nobody's going to want to work with somebody who can't understand social constructs and who doesn't have social intelligence. So I'm not really sure, or I don't really understand if it's a good use of time to try to decode what somebody's saying, rather than maybe just asking them directly, like, could you please clarify? And that'll usually check people and really make them check themselves and make them think about what they're saying and think about how to communicate that clearer. Because as a communicator, there are two parts to it. You have the listener, and then you have yourself. So you have 50% of that burden to make it clear to the listener of what you want, your goals, your vision. And if they don't understand that, then that's got to come back to you. And you have to, as a listener, have to make that person accountable for it too. Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
No, thank you so much for sharing that, Bianca. So I think you said some really important things, and which is that every statement that's made, and I loved how you phrased it, we have kind of 50% of the responsibility for it. So what if I was to say to you that the intentions of these statements were that the first one simply was that, you were routinely showing up late, and it's kind of showing disrespect for the rest of the people who rushed to get here, and please be on time. You could ask a clarifying question like, is that being disruptive to the group? Have I been doing that often? What if the second one was seriously, they just wanted to know that the manuscript draft, they actually kind of wanted to know because there was a special journal coming out, and they wanted to know if you were in the range of being able to finish it in time to submit it or not. No pressure, they just wanted to know. Or the third one is they basically weren't saying you don't dig in. They were simply saying, like, you got to be really persistent, and I know that, and you know that, and it's just a general statement. Or the last one might be, and I see a lot of conversation going on with a situation Monica experienced, and you're welcome to come on and share it, Monica, if you want, but somebody really suggesting that you might have interest in a different path. And I think, I can say also this happened to me, and I heard it, of course, immediately, is that I couldn't cut it. And actually what they were suggesting is that they noticed I was a lot happier doing different kind of work, which is actually what I ended up doing for the last 10 years. So it was actually a wonderful suggestion, but it took me a long time to hear it the way it was intended. So I think you brought up some really important points, Bianca, which is, if someone comes at you with a statement in email or or verbally, is checking yourself on, how am I hearing this? And if you're hearing it in a negative way or a judgmental way, or it triggers every kind of doubt you have about yourself, is asking a clarifying question to make sure, first of all, that's how it was intended. It may have been well intended, but badly delivered. And you can spend a lot of emotional energy, as Bianca said, worrying about things that actually were well-intended and badly delivered. And the second is that you have a lot of power to come back in the conversation and talk about how you're going to take what's given to you. And I think the reason that Kermin and I wanted to put these up was exactly for this kind of conversation. Is it's really hard in graduate school not to take everything personally, because we're so hard on ourselves. And it's really hard to hear poorly delivered statements that are well-intended without beating ourselves up. And you have a lot of power to change that. Yeah, Marco says, well-intended, badly delivered. There's a lot of that. And you know what? The busier people get and the more they rush, the poorer their delivery is. And I think I'm a pretty good communicator. I have poor delivery. It happens. But I would like to think that the people I work with know my intention is good, and that they should, when they ask me something that clarifies it, checks me, and I say, oops, that's not what I meant. Monica, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to, I guess, play devil's advocate a little bit with that statement. So that you can see my sleepy face.
Thank you, Monica.
Like I agree, like, I think we all have been in that position that we wanted to say something and, we haven't really said it the best way, but also, what is it that people say, that the road to hell is paved with good intentions? I think there's a fine line, and I think particularly for students from underrepresented backgrounds, when you then bring in things like microaggressions and stuff like that, it's like, sometimes I feel like there has to be a line where you're like, well, like everybody has a bad day, and I know because of my relationship with this person that they do have good intentions, but there comes a point that good intentions are not enough. Like as a mentor, or like, I would hope that mentors would know that they need to do better. I don't know if you see what I mean. So like, yeah, I think we can give people a pass, but there is a limit. If you have a mentor or an advisor who's constantly saying things to you that are tone deaf, or that are, they're well-intentioned, but that are actually detrimental to you as a student, how do you deal with that?
Absolutely. I'm so glad you brought that up, and really where I really wanted to go is, just because someone's well-intended and bad delivery, the first thing I'd say is that, it's good to develop a benefit of the doubt culture. Let's assume the intention's good. But if there is and it doesn't mean if you just have a bad day that you don't have the right to clarify and call them out on it. But if you see a pattern of this, as you say, this really has huge implications on the relationship. And you have power in that relationship to both decide how much it's going to impact you, and if you want to stay in it, or if you want to call it out. This is giving someone the benefit of the doubt doesn't mean excusing bad behavior, and I think that's the point you're making, and it's a really important one. If somebody is, constantly employing microaggressions, you don't just say, well, they intended. They're well intended. It's not okay. But taking a moment and saying, okay, how much power am I going to give this, and what might be intended, and now what do I want to do about it? Do I want to educate that person? How does the power dynamic play into that? Do I want to stay in this relationship? Do I want to seek help? If I do want to approach it, how do I do that? And giving that some time. So I absolutely, and I think Kermin, you may want to come on here. I'm not suggesting, and I'm so glad you raised it, that it excuses the behavior. But what I would like to suggest is that starting from a place of trying to understand the intention can often help to a much more productive conversation. It doesn't mean that if the intention was good but it's delivered poorly, the person shouldn't be told it was delivered poorly, and they shouldn't try to fix that and work on that. But it does mean that you can speak to that from a much more secure position when you are able to check the emotional reaction to it and be proactive and productive in it, is what I'm suggesting. Because how many of us have, I've been here, I'm having all these conversations walking home about what I wish I had said, and I'm getting super emotional, and I keep having it. That's a huge emotional drain that many of us experience. and just being intentional about how much power you want to give that and what exactly you want to do in terms of addressing it. So I don't know, Monica, if that resonates with what you're saying, or if you feel like that doesn't go far enough.
Yeah, it does. I guess it'd be, I don't know if this is going to be part of the conversation, but at least maybe after, if it's not, maybe after the fact, like, you know, what are some tools that as a mentee you can use so that you can do this effectively? Because, you know, I think sometimes I certainly felt that when I was a grad student, and I talked to many grad students who feel that the weight of educating the mentors, it's on them, and it can be really exhausting.
Absolutely. And the weight, you know, does feel like it's on them to do that, and it isn't. And, you know, as you know, we do a lot of our work training mentors as well to be more culturally aware. And, you know, Kermin, I don't know if there's something you want to share as well about this, but I think that we are not powerless. It is a huge weight. But it also can come from a place of power. And that, I think, is important. And so I see a lot of comments. I know, Kermin, do you want to comment about what's in the chat window? Because I haven't been able to monitor it completely.
Yeah, there is a lot of talks about the relationship, you know, and how they can be monitored. So I think that most people are commenting on Monica's post early on. So I think that the communication is going to be really important, and making sure that you understand where your mentor is coming from as well. So, and I would like to go back to my comment about the cultural differences, you know, and I think that Bianca pointed that out at the beginning as well, you know, how you can misinterpret what somebody else is saying is also really important.
Yeah. Sorry, is anybody there? It seems like Francesca had her hand raised.
Can you all hear me? I'm having connection problems.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, so I just wanted to resonate with Bianca from a perspective of someone that wasn't raised in the US. So my first year, it was extremely hard, and it wasn't necessarily my mentor, it was senior grad students in the lab. And I agree with Bianca in the sense that it's sometimes worse to dwell on it, because we are emotional, and on top of that, I'm an extremely emotional person. I'm a crier, and it was really hard for me to get used to the, like Bianca described, the passive aggressiveness that you feel from Americans, and I don't want to include everyone, but it's very dry. And I agree that it was easier to start talking and being like, oh, can you repeat that? Or what do you mean by that? And even I approached my PI and I approached other people, because there was a point where I was crying half the time of the week and it wasn't good anymore. And I felt like I didn't belong, and I felt like people were thinking the worst of me when they really weren't. It's just the bad delivery, like we said. But again, I think something that will keep coming around to is that we need to speak up, and not necessarily do it at the moment to that person, but maybe reach out to other people who can help you maybe decode and like try to learn how to deal with that type of people. That was all.
Thank you so much for sharing. So I've heard a lot of terms of decoding, taking a moment, thinking about how do you want to respond, maybe even reflecting on it and practicing if it's going to be emotional. But I also hear of, you know, the weight of the responsibility, especially coming from the underrepresented perspective of that too, and I want to honor that and Monica sharing that. So Just checking the time. Okay, we're fine. So just a couple minutes more on this, and we'll keep talking about this as we continue, especially as we move into other strategies. Does anyone else want to share either something that is triggering them in this conversation that they feel they want to share with the group, or if you've had a strategy or experience in which you have kind of spoken up, and whether it was to ask clarifying questions, to say, I don't feel right about this, this doesn't feel supportive, it isn't building my confidence, and how they've done that. All right, so the last invitation I'll make, and Kermin and I always make this, is whenever we kind of get into conversation in which issues you know, can be quite personal, and people can have personal reactions to them, we always want to ask it, you know, is there anything that anybody needs, they feel they have to say because they can't move on without saying it. We don't want you to kind of be sitting and stewing and kind of not be able to move on in the experience if you really need to say something. Yeah, Kimberly, go ahead. Oh, no, she just joined the session, sorry. She was having connection issues. All right, so the last thing I'll say is that this is also complicated when we read email or text. So filters in particular, it's one thing we talked about context, which is really important. And context when you hear things verbally is really important. You lose a lot of context when things are in print. And so this, you've probably heard this before, but you hear them in your own voice, which of course is impacted by how you feel and your experience and your interaction with the person delivering it. And those are really important things to think about when you're reacting. Yeah, Kermin, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to point out that it's also sometimes useful to actually talk aloud with people that you trust. I found that helped me a lot when I was in grad school, sorry. And that actually was my motivation to create some sections at SACNAS to kind of go over these difficult conversations. So obviously you're not going to tell what is happening to you to everybody, but finding that person that you can actually trust to share what is happening to you is also really important. And what you're going to find out is that you are not the only one. There's going to be other person that may happen to the same situation that you just are going through, and that person can also become a mentor and help you out to find ways to get around. So finding those people are going to be really important as well. Just want to share that. Thank you. Chris, your mic is off.
Thank you so much again, Kermin. Doing a check, this is really important as we talk about expanding your networks, which we'll talk about in the third hour. Important people to have in your network are ones that you can bounce these ideas off, help you to not feel alone, practice these difficult conversations, run an email on someone by them before you send it. And also, you know, to kind of go back is to kind of touch base on saying, like, does this seem accurate? Is what I'm experiencing, you know, check? Is it really happening? And if it really is, what do you want to do about it? And so I think those are really important people to have in your network. And of course, you guys are all part of this amazing program and have this network that you can use each other for. So just kind of as summary, and this is kind of going all the way back to when we started working on communication with Kermin leading, is some tips that we would suggest is really determining your mentor's preferred medium of communication, face-to-face, phone, email, text. We had some great ideas in the chat. And acknowledge if it differs from your own personal preference. So, you know, I have folks that I work with who really would prefer that we basically are communicating largely in email and text. And I'm a face-to-face person. So that, you know, I have to acknowledge that and think about strategies for what's effective in those platforms. Really important to have regular times. You have a relationship with your mentors, and you build relationships by having consistent time together, whether that's virtual or face-to-face, and it's important to have that. Keeping track of shared progress and goals, and we'll talk a little bit about ways to do that. Following up in writing of when you've had a conversation is, this is what I heard. Does this resonate with how you experience the conversation as well? Identifying challenges and requests that your mentor's advice intervention when appropriate. So if you're stuck, asking for help. Preparing for meetings, we talked about that and what you want to get out of it. So that's really productive time and it's directed in a way that you'd like to direct it. We talked a little bit about cultural differences and similarities and how those can impact communication. And then a little bit about this kind of benefit of the doubt philosophy, just kind of taking a moment to think about what did they likely intend by that statement and how am I interpreting it? Doesn't mean letting someone off the hook if they have bad behaviors, but taking a moment to decide how much you're going to reflect on it, how much power you're going to give it, and how you want to respond to it. We don't have a ton of time today to talk about those difficult conversations and actually practice responding in those. That may be something, if you haven't already had as part of your program, that Giovanna and Monica might want to think about, because I'm a big fan of actually having training sessions and having role play and practice time on actually having those difficult conversations. So I'm going to turn it back over to Kermin.
Okay, hi again, everybody, and thank you for sharing that. That was a great conversation. So we're going to move on to the next topic that we have for today, and that's going to be about assessing understanding. And one of the key important things in a mentor relationship is to make sure that you're understanding each other. So we're going to give you some strategies for you to make sure that you understand what your mentor is pretty much saying, and how you're communicating, just to make sure that you have that communication going on in there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to break everybody into breakout rooms. So Chris is gonna kind of move us to a breakout room, and we're going to discuss this scenario that we have here in the slide. So before we move on to the breakout room, I would like to ask two people, one that will be Farha and one that will be Lena. So that way we can actually read that and we're kind of role play that. And then we're going to move you to the breakout room. You don't need to do anything. Chris is going to be doing that for us. And then I will need to have one person that will be kind of the leader in that breakout room to follow the discussion. And you're going to focus that discussion on the questions that you're going to see in the slide. So I will ask for two volunteers to read be Farha and one for being Lena. Not all at the same time, please. Two volunteers. I want to. Okay, Naomi and Ariadna, go ahead. And let's go by Naomi is gonna be Farha, and then Lena is gonna be the other person. I forgot who was. It just disappeared. So go ahead, Ariadna. Sorry.
Did you get time to talk with your mentor, Dr. Andrews, this week?
Yeah, Ariadna, with the mic. You having problem? Okay, another volunteer. Luz, you want to go?
Fine.
Okay,
Yeah.
Luz, go ahead.
Yeah, for all the good it did me.
What do you mean?
We talked for 30 minutes and I still have no clue what he wants from me. I described the progress I was making and where I was stuck, but I am not any clear on next steps after the discussion.
Was he unhappy with what you have done?
No, he seemed good with it. He told me to start thinking about writing it up.
Well, it seems like you are doing fine.
I don't feel fine.
Okay, thank you, Luz and Naomi, for saying that. So we're going to move on to the breakout rooms. I'm going to post here the instruction for the breakout rooms. And as I said, you will going to be in this breakout room between 3 and 4 participants. And you need to make sure that everybody use the audio and video and to introduce yourself. And you will have a chance about 10 minutes total. So make sure that you allow everybody. And then we're going to give you a 1-minute warning before we move you on to the main room, okay? So make sure that you have a leader in that section, in that breakout room, so that person can actually report back to the main room. So we're going to move you on to the breakout rooms, and you're going to see the same case that we just read in the screen in that breakout room, and we're going to be popping in and out from those rooms. So Chris, if you can actually set up the breakout room, that would be great.
Okay, I'm going to move everybody. Just we'll post the question in the chat, but basically just from that really short scenario, what we want you to talk about for 9 minutes is what strategies are you using or can you use to really help your mentor understand what you're saying and what you need. So it isn't exactly the role play that we just discussed from the last section, but it really starts to get you saying out loud to one another and coming up with sharing strategies about effective communication. All right, I'm going to move you now, and please all come on an audio and video as you can so you can see and talk to one another. Welcome back, everyone.
Good time in your room, so I'm going to ask now volunteers, one volunteer or two from all those groups to actually share your experience in here. That was another feature that we have in Blackboard Ultra, so we actually enjoy using that, so you can actually have some small discussion. So anyone want to share your feedback about the discussion of the case study? That okay, Ainet, please go ahead.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you great.
Yes. Well, I wrote some of the things that our group was saying. We were Marcos, Amanda, and Andrew. And some of the things that we discussed, that was writing down or thinking before your concerns, before approaching your mentor. That could be good. Be clear, direct, using references to establish your point. Be early on and ask. Don't wait until you're more confused. Take initiative, pop your ideas. Also, we found a consultant with peers, professors, other lab partners, maybe considering them to be on the meeting could help. And set up follow-up sessions, addressing other issues, and sending an email with meeting notes, like in Spanish we call them minutas, so that everyone can be clear about the points they were discussing.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. Can you please use the text option in the whiteboard and then type those in here?
Yes, sure.
Thank you. So we can have a record of that. Any other group want to share your experience? Priscilla, please go ahead and please type those in the whiteboard as well, so we can actually take a screenshot to share it with Monica and.
Okay, yeah, so in my group it was Natalie, Corines, Ariadna, and myself, and some of the things we said was she could bring something written to the meeting. She could show him some graphs and figures. Instead of just showing him the raw data, she could just show him something that she did with the data. And also an important thing that we were talking about for a while was instead of waiting for the PI to tell you what your future experiments should be, maybe you should be a little bit more proactive in that and tell your PI what you think you should do next with what you've read and what you know. And then if you do that, then the PI just has to tell you, yes, you know, that sounds great, and then there's no confusion there. Or he'll say no, and then obviously your follow-up question would be, then what should I do?
Okay, thank you for sharing that. And can you please post those in your chat window so that way we can have the record of that? Thank you for sharing that. Any other group that want to share your discussion? Kimberly, do you want to share? Oh, Fabi, go ahead. Yes.
Okay, so we agreed with the, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, we agree with the previous groups in making a list prior to the meeting with the things that you want to discuss. But also we talk about sending an email after the meeting and stating what they discussed during the meeting and a list of doubts in case you didn't have the opportunity to do it during the meeting.
Okay. Yeah, follow-up is really important, and that's going to be also useful if you are actually meeting with your advisor to have an agenda, so that way you can actually summarize the key points. And if you have any questions, you can actually highlight that. It's okay, Kimberly. Anybody else want to, and Fabi, please share those in the chat room so everybody can actually see it, and we can keep a record of that. Any other group want to share anything about it?
Hi, this is Luz. In our group was Gracia, Kimberly, and oh, I forgot the other two. So Joanna was there. So we talked about different strategies, like we discussed before, making a list prior to the meeting, just to go straight to the point and discuss all the things that you want to be discussed. And Gracia brought a really good idea of recording maybe the meeting, because sometimes you talk about so many things and it's hard to lose into the details or maybe miss one point. So it's kind of nice to record if your PI is okay with it. And we also talk, for example, I'm always looking for like a personal connection with everyone. That's why I like to talk face to face. I prefer that, and I hate tests unless it's completely necessary. I prefer to call. And I think it is, I enjoy, for example, start the conversation with my boss talking about what we did during the weekend. How was your weekend? Like you did something fun, or, you know, things like that. And in that way you can get to know each other a little bit more as well, and break the ice. And yeah, you're going to be with this person for at least 4 years. So I think it's important to feel comfortable enough. So basically that's what we talk.
Yeah. Thank you, Luz. Yeah, about recording the section, and you need to be careful, you know, and then, you know, but if your PI is in agreement and okay with you recording that, I will not advise you to do that without the PI consent. So make sure that you actually ask for permission before you do that. Anybody else want to share something? And Chris, feel free to jump in, and I will ask you to Luz and Fabi to please post those comments in the chat room. It looks like in the whiteboard, some of them are not coming out pretty well, so if you can post them in the chat room, that would be great. Anybody else want to share? So I think that the take-home message from pretty much most of the group was actually the follow-up and making sure that you are clear about what you discussed with your mentor. Giovanna or Monica, Chris, if you want to add something before we move on to the next section.
Yeah, Kermin, I just want to add that, you know, as a mentor, it really, really helps me when folks summarize the meeting, and it's not because I wasn't engaged in what we were talking about or wanting to be helpful and want to remember everything. But, you know, especially for mentors who might have, you know, 4, 5, 6 mentees, it's just a lot of cognitive load. And so, you know, I can be a better mentor if I can check those notes. I can make sure we're on the same page. I can prepare for the next meeting, especially if I agreed to do something. And so, you know, it might feel like, okay, well, that burden's back on the mentee, but I think it literally is sometimes it's just we're all processing so much, including yourselves, that both of us having a written record is just something we can use to reflect and refer to.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And also, and in my case, it actually helped me. So I have been using Google Keep and Google Docs to with my undergraduate student, just to make sure, because sometimes you're so overwhelmed and so busy with so many things, and if I don't write things down, I will forget. So I will highly encourage you to write down what you're discussing, so that way if you say something, then you can go back in there. So it's going to be also for you kind of things to do list, you know, it's all going to be also help you for do that. And what I do with my student is we are having a Google Keep. I don't know if you're familiar with Google Keep, but you can actually keep track of the different tasks. So that way I can double check, okay, if I agree to help her in something, I can actually click there so she can actually see that I completed that. So it's a good way to communicate with that.
Yeah,
Okay,
sorry.
Marcos, I'm sorry, Monica. Marco is asking about Google Keep.
Mhm.
Google Keep is an option that is you create some notes online, and it's more kind of for you to do like a things to do list, and then you can keep track. You can I'm gonna post the link in the chat room so you can actually see it. But if you have a Gmail account as part of the application from Google, you have Google Keep, and you can keep track of your project and so on. Monica, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say there's different other softwares. So Asana it's one that I use with Giovanna actually to keep track of our tasks, and it allows you to assign tasks and put deadlines on it. And you know, if you're collaborating, putting if you're working on something that then needs to be passed on to someone else, you can do that in Asana. So it seems like it has a lot of the same features. Dropbox also has something called, I think it's called Papers, that you can do similar things like create to-do lists and assign who's going to do what. But I wanted to say, hold on one second. Sorry about that. What I wanted to say was that, and I wanted to really emphasize the importance of maybe ending meetings with, if it's appropriate for what you're talking about, of ending meetings with action items. So, you know, have clarity on if you're going to do experiments, like what experiments you're going to do. So have at least 2-3 action items of what you're going to do to follow up the discussion, or what the next steps are in a project, who's going to do what, so that expectations and responsibilities are clear. And that's something that is really important.
Yeah, that's a great point, Monica. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I will highly encourage you that so you can actually do a timeline or a progress report. So next time when you meet with your mentor, you say, okay, I was able to accomplish this, but I'm stuck in here. And, you know, and that way you can actually follow up and then ask a more specific question, you know, about that. So especially if you're doing any kind of data analysis, or you're working in a technique and you were supposed to read an article about that, you found the article, but you don't understand something in that article, that would be a good way to kind of follow up with that particular point. So having those action items is going to be actually key for that. So thank you for sharing that. We're going to move on to the next section now. So the next section that we have for you is going to be about the mentoring compact. So, and the mentoring compact is something that some people call it contract, some people call it compact. So you can go back and forward between them, but it's pretty much a document that you can actually create to make sure that you are in the same page and you have the same expectation with your mentor. Having these compacts are a good way for you to make sure that you have something in a document that you can actually go back and then double check that. So we're going to be discussing that from the mentee perspective, you know, where the compacts are. I'm going to give you some examples about that. But first, let me define, you know, and give you an overview about what is a mentoring compact. And again, people can call it compact and contract. Contract is more legally binding than compact. I prefer to use compact instead. This can be a document that you can discuss with your mentor and then even sign that up with that. But here is the description about that. It's a document that you are going to articulate your expectation between you and your mentor. It actually differs from the IDP, the Individual Development Plan, which I'm pretty sure some of you already hear about that, because the Individual Development Plan focuses in short and long-term career plan, whereas the mentoring compact is about the expectation for the research and that kind of interaction between you and your mentor. It focuses about the working relationship, and most likely in the daily and weekly basis, and they can be different and they vary in the format and the level of detail. So that is a call that you can between you and your mentor, you can actually decide how the mentoring compact needs to be. The rationale behind this is once again having the expectation clear Having that expectation is really important for that mentor-mentee relationship. And again, don't think that once you create this document with your mentor that you cannot change it. It's something that is ongoing. You can actually revisit that, and then making sure that whatever you decided or you agree on is actually working. And if it's not working, then you will have that kind of communication with your mentor to fix that. Excuse me. It also serves as a reference point, so you can actually see your progress. Okay, if you agree to say something, you have it there. You can actually go back and excuse me, make everything in visible. Sorry, water time. The other thing is like it clarifies and make all the levels of playing field in there. So once again, it's a document for you to align the expectation between you and your mentor. Excuse me. One of the domains that you need to consider for the mentoring compact is like, for example, the mentor can be talking about what I expect from you, and here are some examples. Take ownership of your educational experience, develop your personal research skills, contribute to the lab, and be a good lab citizen. That's some expectation that your mentor might have. But you can also write your own expectation, like I will provide the means to pursue scientific direction of our team, committed to mentoring you now, and so on. So here are some example about what should be included in the compact. Okay, so this document should be something that you discuss with your mentor in order to make sure that you have that in black and white. And some of the problem that happen in the mentor-mentee relationship is because of the misunderstanding and miscommunication about the expectations. And I wish that back in the day when I was in grad school, I actually have a document like this, so I can actually ask my advisor. Everything was so big in the sense that sometimes I was like kind of lost about what to follow up with. So this will give you a direction. And if you are pretty detail oriented and you need to have like a things to do list, this document is going to be something useful for you. And you can even include hours that you're going to be spending in the lab, when to take vacations, group meetings, annual evaluation, the authorship that we discussed early on. It's really important that that can be clarified in this document as well. Another thing that you need to keep in mind with using the mentoring compact is like this document can actually address expectation across a range of different issues. And some of the example of these issues can be issues related to research productivity. So if you're having issues with designing an experiment, writing a lab notebook and timelines, it can actually help you with that. The issue of authorship that we discussed, what are the policies, what are the timing of the decision, the raising the question when you need to do that. It's really important that you have it in black and white. The time, only in terms of work hours, vacations, sick leave, what are your options, what is the policy about that? And again, this can be dependent of, can change from field to field and also from institution to institution. So you need to make sure that you know what are your options. Having the communication, the frequency of the meeting, the preparation and follow-up that we discussed, the method of communication that we discussed early, and the annual reviews. Also, the respect, issues of respect, being a good team member, contribution to the lab climate, acknowledging the work of others, and in some cases, even the use of phones and earphones in the lab. Are your advisor okay with that? Are your lab members okay with that? What is the policy? You want to make sure that you are clear about that, so that way you're not doing something that other people might be offended by that. Professional development and networking issues with that can be addressed in that, when to attend the meetings, conferences, and department and campus seminar, the IDPs, you can actually put that in the mentoring compact. And finally, resolving any conflict, when to bring up the issues and with whom, and institutional resources. So all of these issues can be put in black and white in your mentoring compact. So now what I would like to do, we are going to have a poll in here. Chris is going to put a poll in here. So what is your experience with the mentoring compact? We just want to hear if you have heard about this, if you're using that. So the first option is we are going to, for number one, it's going to be, I have never heard of a mentoring compact. Number two, I have heard of a compact but never seen one. Number three, I have seen a compact but don't use one. And number four, I have used one as a mentor or as a mentee. So if you can actually answer that, that will be good. Okay, it looks like a lot of you have never heard of a mentoring compact. So I think that that's almost everybody. So Chris, if you can please close the poll in there. So that's good to know. I mean, we hope that you actually consider that. You may want to recommend your mentor that you want to actually have something in writing, you know, and that way you can actually discuss that. You're going to see some examples, you know, but I will actually open the floor to have that conversation with your mentor. You know, if you feel that you don't have a clear expectation about what you should be doing, I will highly encourage you to actually sit down with your mentor and then draft together the mentoring compact. So now I would like for you to either use the chat room or the whiteboard and then let us know what are your initial thoughts about using the mentor mentee compact and if you have any concerns. So I'm going to give you a couple more minutes to actually share that. So share what you think about using this or any concern that you may have. You can use the chat room or you can actually post that in the whiteboard. I'm gonna paste that in the chat room so that way we have the questions in here. So I'm gonna give you okay, Shaimar says that her school require one. Luz, yes, you will have one and we're going to share some resources at the end. So you will have that. Yeah, we have a template for you. Yep, you're gonna see that. Okay, clear expectation. Contra the stipulate goals, objectives that can be too broad are open to modifications. Okay. Yeah, the good thing about using compacts, you know, is like as I said, if you have this in a document, you can actually go back and then you can actually kind of I will not say confront, may not be the right word for that, but at least you can show your advisor, hey, we agree about this and I feel that we're not following this. So it's a good way to actually go back and then make sure that you're following what you agree to follow, you know. And some advisors don't even like it, you know, in some cases. So it's on you also to make sure that you have that clear. And yeah, Shaimar, I completely agree. It also makes them accountable for that, you know. So if they agree with you to do something, you know, that's also pretty good. Any concern that you have about the using the compact? Any concern before we move on? That's a good point, Chris. Yeah, and we will highly encourage you to tell your mentor, hey, this is training about how to be a better mentor, you know, and I will highly encourage you to actually take it, you know, so that way you can share that. You can share. We're going to share some information at the end. We will highly encourage you also for you to participate in those as well. So there is some training. Yes,
Kermin, I just wanted to add that, and Priscilla, you brought up the point, like, and it was also in the chat room, kind of like how the suggestion is received. So one concrete way to bring this up with your group is the next time, if you want to wait for this, but you could certainly just bring it up and say, hey, I learned about these things. Do you know about these? Here's some examples which we'll share with you. Do you think this would be good for our lab? The other thing is the next time a new person joins the lab, one way to introduce this is, you know, when I started here, there were a lot of like expectations that you might have told me or that were kind of invisible to me. And I think it'd be really useful if we had something that we could give to everybody when they started the lab that kind of gave them all the expectations, and it could be a living document. We could even build it as a lab team for everybody who comes to the group. Then it's not kind of saying like we should have done this before or you should feel behind as a mentor that we don't have one. It's you suggesting how something to improve the lab. And then, you know, you could say, you know, I have some examples we could start with, and then it's really you starting to change the culture from the inside.
Thank you, Chris, for sharing that. And anybody else have any concerns about it? Or anything that you want to share? Feel free to raise your hands or use the chat room. Jose, yes, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Yeah, for those in the UPR Medical Sciences campus, we do have one, but the problem with our compact is that it establishes a lifelong responsibility, so the mentors do not want to sign that. But we do have one.
Can you change it at all or not? Or that's
Well,
something like set in stone and you can adapt it to you or something?
I don't know if we can adapt it because, or they are trying to do it, but it will take time. But we use one as a whole institution.
Yeah, you may want to bring up that, you know, to your mentor, you know, see how you can have that conversation going with him or her, you know, and if you think that it's going to be useful for you, obviously, you know.
Mm-hmm.
This is Joanna. I have heard from PIs that are reticent to use compacts because they think that, you know, they might be held negatively accountable if, you know, they don't follow what they sign. One option is, if you're finding that there's some reticence, is that the compacts are really a good template of things that you need to discuss with your PI and be in agreement on. So even if you don't have anything in writing, at the very least, it's a good tool to guide some of your discussions with your research advisor to get clarity on some of the things that Kermin outlined, you know, time, hours, expectations, things you want to get out of the relationship, expectations from your mentor for yourself. So that's one option if you're finding, you know, resistance to using one.
Yeah, and maybe using the word compact or contract might be too strong, but if you can soft that out, you know, say, okay, this is, you can just highlight the points and you can call it, you know, whatever you want. But as long as you have some clear expectation about what you should be doing, I think that would work as well. It's just something that, you know, you can go back and double check that you're moving forward and both of you are in agreement with that. Okay, so I think that we're going to move on to the next slide right here. Here are some examples for those of you that were asking about that. And once again, we're going to share this. There's going to be other examples as well in one of the links that we're going to share. And if you need more, feel free to contact me or contact Chris. I can share other versions of the compact. But here are some examples about that. This was already created for undergraduate students, but it's kind of the similar to graduate students. And you can see here about that. It's really talking about the different goals of the project, you know, what are going to be your agreement, how many semesters you're going to be working, you know, how many hours a week are you going to be working, and so on. So it can be really detailed, what you're going to be doing on a daily basis. Are you going to communicate face-to-face with phone, email, instant messaging, and so on? So it's very important that you have that clear. And what are going to be your responsibilities as well? Just make sure that you have that clear. So here is one example. And here we have another one that is pretty detailed that one professor at UW-Madison created for graduate students. And it's more details about that. And it's pretty clear about what you need to do. And once again, this is something that you should create with your mentor and then adapt it based on what you think that is going to be also useful for you. Okay, so here's some examples about that. I think the last slide that I have in here is going to be about the resources that we have in here. So we have other example of mentoring compact in this link right here. And once again, this is going to be shared with you, but you can actually see others are going to be more targeted to grad school, and there are more details about it. The whole point that we will really want to share with you is to actually make sure that you create this document with your mentor, so your expectation, that communication, and that understanding about your relationship between you and your mentor is actually clear. And if you can have that in a black and white document, that's going to be even better. So before I turn it back to Chris, do you have any questions about the mentoring compact or something that you want to share? And Marcos is suggesting it would be great to talk with the deanship is in way they can require one when you enter the lab. Yeah, that's gonna be a good idea if you can actually do that. The trick is to develop a compact with your mentor that benefit you both equally. Priscilla pointed that out. Yeah, that's why you need to sit down with your mentor, and then making sure that you're on the same page. And again, this will help you to avoid those miscommunication, misunderstanding. Well, I thought that you said this, but now you're saying that. But we agree on this, and that way you have that document in there to kind of go back. And if that is not clear, then you can actually update that compact, and then make sure that is working for you. That's a great idea, Marco. Let us know if we can help you with that. Yeah, the more specific, Priscilla. Yeah, the more specific that you can be. Yeah, avoid any kind of vague terms in there. Make sure that everything is clear. That you really mean what you mean. Like just making sure, and your advisor or mentor understand that as well. That's pretty important, just to avoid any kind of misunderstanding. I don't know if Chris or Giovanna or Monica want to add something else before we transition to the next section.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that response to Priscilla's comment is it's actually kind of funny because sometimes when mentors start using these, they think, oh, it's going to be, we want it to be a short document. And then especially folks who revisit these, let's say once or twice a year with their group, is there's always something else to add where someone will say, well, it would have been better if that had been in our compact. And so one of the long ones you'll see if you explore these examples is something like 4 pages long. And the reason it became 4 pages is because over the years, the mentees have keep bringing up things that they say that should be in the compact. And it turned it, because it just got more and more specific. So I think you're absolutely right. But I think it's really important is that as those things raise, you avoid those issues in the future if you can address them directly when they really happen and add them so everybody knows.
Hey, Chris and Kermin. I wanted to ask, what is the benefit of having like a written document that you can both share and like maybe even like sign, versus using this document as a guide to a conversation? Like, is it better to have the written one, or can you use it as just a guideline to have a conversation?
Yeah, I can jump in and see what Kermin thinks. I think it depends on the relationship. So I absolutely agree that, we always tell mentors when we're training them is this, you should use this. Everybody seems to agree that outlining expectations should be really important. Although it's interesting because some mentors will say that what this raises to them in their consciousness is that they really do philosophically believe people should figure it out on their own. That they had never said that out loud, but they don't want to use it because that's what they believe. Which is so interesting because, I often come back and say, well, what's the harm in giving everybody the same information? But if you philosophically believe that that's part of the game and people have to figure it out, it's important that you recognize that and do tell your mentees that, because that's an expectation. That's a longer conversation about how that disadvantages certain groups, but we'll get to that. We won't get to that today. But one of the things that's important to remember, and what we say, is that if you're going to use compacts for especially undergrads or early grad students, remember that you're going to have to take into consideration how empowered they are to talk about what they need in the document. So part of the reason it's a great framework for discussion if both people feel that they can be honest and open about what's expected. If the mentee is just like, yeah, that sounds great, okay, that sounds great, then starting with something that lays it all out, including what the mentee can expect from the mentor, means that document needs to be revisited, but it's getting that all on the table before they might be in a place in their relationship where they could push back on the discussion. So that's just one thing to consider, is that early on, sometimes having the whole written thing with the offer for people to add to it is important. The other thing is that, and people on this webinar might want to add to this, is, I don't know about you, but when I started, I didn't know what to ask for. I didn't even know what questions were asked, and even if I had the questions, I didn't know what I could say about, like, for example, hours. How many hours should I be expected to work? So I think that having the questions there, sometimes we're not early on aren't prepared to give answers anyway. So those are just all considerations. But I'll tell you, there's no study out there saying one form is better than the other and for whom it's better. That would be a cool study to do. Kermin, I don't know what you want to add.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. The other thing is, like, if you're really early on in your career, especially in your graduate school, and having this conversation with your mentor may be a good thing to do, because it might raise a red flag, about how this person is going to be with you and your career. If a person is not willing to sit down with you and then clarify the expectations and the goals that you need to do in order to complete your PhD, that is telling you something. So it's actually raising a red flag. Obviously, I'm not saying that you need to switch advisor or anything like that. I'm not implying that, but it's gonna be a good way for you to reflect on that, and then you need to make your call if this person is the right person for me to be a mentor. Okay, so just keep that in mind. That having something is in black and white is really important. Anybody else want to add something before we move on to the next section? Okay, just to make this interactive, I will ask you, how are you feeling so far? We're getting pretty close now to the last part of the hour, so if you can give me an emoticon in your chat, that would be great before I turn it back to Chris. So let us know how you feel by using an emoticon. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to turn it back to Chris so she can continue with the next discussion. Thank you, everybody.
Great, thanks, Kermin. Thanks. Oh, wow, those googly eye, that one, that's funny. Great. So again, if you need to stand or stretch, we're kind of in the home stretch here, and I know people have been sitting for a while. Feel free to do that. And we're going to go into one last section here on really identifying your needs and mentoring networks, and then talk about some resources. And we will absolutely be done on time if you're planning your schedule. So we want to take a couple minutes and think about needs. So what we'd like you to do is just individually on your own, if you have a piece of paper, you can jot this down, is pick the 3 roles on this list you most need your mentor. It could be your primary mentor or mentors for those of you who feel like you have more than one mentor to play right now. And if you don't see what you need right now on this list, you can certainly use the other category to add things. But just take a minute or two and just, again, on a piece of paper you have in front of you or not, pick 3 roles that you most need your mentor to play right now.
Chris, can you read them out for the people on the phone?
I absolutely can. Thank you for suggesting that. So the list is teach by example, train you in disciplinary research, improve your communication skills, provide or help you find funding, provide growth experiences, help build your self-confidence, promote your professional behavior, manage your career, help you focus and prioritize, offer encouragement, give feedback, facilitate networking with colleagues, and help you navigate the institution or other. And one of the comments in the chat is, how about all the above? So I'm actually I agree that we all need many things, but I'm really gonna encourage you to prioritize 3 right now. Of course, if you have 20 needs, they all should be met, and thinking about how to have those met is important. But pick the 3 that are most important to you right now. And it could be most important to you in the next month. It doesn't have to be the next year. Use whatever time frame makes sense to you. And you're welcome to share them in the chat window if you want to, or just keep them for yourself personally. That's fine. Thank you, Kermin, for also posting them in the chat. Great. So as you're thinking, and you can see, I think one of the first things you see is everybody needs different stuff. The priorities of what you need are different, and they'll change over your career, and they'll change with who you're working with. Marcos, that's funny. Yeah. Great. Thank you so much for sharing. Okay, so now keep those in mind. And Kermin's going to set up a poll for us. Yeah, we see a lot of K, giving feedback, a lot of E too, growth experiences and training and research. So Kermin, if you can set up the 4-choice poll, what I want to ask you now, and we'll leave these up here, is how many of your top 3 needs are being met to your satisfaction? So another way to phrase this is, are you getting what you need? And let me put the satisfaction ratings up on the next slide. Hold on one sec. Oh, I blocked the slide, Kermin. I can't advance it. Can you take the poll down and put it back up for me? That was my mistake, sorry. I'm gonna shut it down for a sec. I have to advance the slide first. There we go. Okay, so can you start the poll again, Kermin? Thank you so much. Okay. So how many of your top 3 needs are being met to your satisfaction? None of them, 1 of them, 2 of them, all 3 of them. And you can also share in the chat if you prefer, instead of clicking on the choice in the poll. And for those on the phone, you can just think about how many are being met. So a big range so far. Some people saying none of them, people saying 1 of them, 2 of them, a couple individuals having all their top needs met right now. Good for you. All right, I think everyone has responded. Okay, so what we want to dive into now, just in this last kind of discussion question before we get to resources, is really how can you get your needs met? So the first thing is, and if you could stop the poll, Kermin, that would be fantastic. Look like we averaged out right about 2.5, I think. So folks feeling that maybe 1.5 of their needs being met. Great. All right. So one of the questions that we want you to think about is having these needs met. And one of the first things that, and maybe obvious, is it's pretty hard for a single mentor to fill all those roles, even just 3 of them. So I can say as a mentor, there are some things that I think I'm pretty good at, and then there's other roles that I'm just not as good at. And I'll also admit that sometimes when some of my mentees need a lot, I can't fill all the roles at once. So if somebody is needing encouragement and feedback and training and disciplinary research and providing some growth opportunities, and really also struggling with feeling self-confident, I'm going to try really hard to fill all those. But if I'm trying to do that across multiple people, there's a point at which I may not be as effective as a single individual. And so one of the things we really promoted, and I know that that's part of the program as well, that is a huge core-ish priority, is finding mentors to fill the roles that you need to be filled. And so making yourself a network of mentors, surrounding yourself by multiple mentors, a team of mentors. And those can be peer mentors, those could be people who are more senior to you. Some of you might even include people in your family in that mentoring mosaic, what it's often called. So what we'd like you to share in chat or raise your hand is, how do you find those mentors? So let's imagine that everyone, most of you had at least one of the needs that was not being fulfilled to your satisfaction, your priority needs. How could you find someone to fill that need? So I'll give you a minute to think about that. And again, you can share in the chat or raise your hand. Is how do you find other mentors to fill those roles? Thanks, Kermin, for posting that in the chat. And if you don't know, you can say, I don't know. Okay. I realize I should make that an option. And if anybody has some good ideas of how to find those mentors, we'd love to hear them. Yeah, Luz, please go ahead.
Hi. I believe that it is important to have more than one or two mentors, because I think all of them can contribute in a significant way in your formation. Like, I believe every single one of them will have like an expertise that they can help you. Of course, nobody is good at everything. That doesn't exist. So I think it is important to have like a group that can complement each other, and they can be perfect as one when they get together. So
great, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, it's very important to both identify what you need, but then right, to surround yourself by multiple people who can complement each other and ultimately form the support network that you need. So I'm seeing a lot of I don't knows, a couple programs like this, and we're gonna have Giovanna come on and Monica talk about that in a couple minutes. Any other comments? Yeah, so Janetta, a great point is that, talking to people in your department, past professors, great. Yep, we'll talk about the NRMN tool. Even other postdocs in the department who are near peer mentors to you, but could help fulfill some of those needs. Networking, yep, certainly, folks. I know folks. Those of you who go to programs like SOCNAS have a lot of mentoring programs. Peers, yep, I use my peers all the time as mentors. And that can be especially around those skills of where I'm really needing some help with my feeling confident in my skills, is going to my peers and near peers and saying, I'm really kind of not feeling confident. One, can you give me a reality check? But two, can you help me focus on where I need some more skill development so I'll feel more confident? Some great ideas in the chat room. So one, keeping your eyes open, and part of it is also asking. Now, it might feel like a big task to go to someone and say, will you be my mentor? But you can start smaller than that. You can certainly go to someone and say, I really need a second set of eyes on something I would love some feedback on my writing. Or I'm going to a meeting and I'm a little bit shy, and networking is something that I'm nervous about. I'm wondering if we could talk about that. Or now some people might not be able to help you with funding, that's a little different, but you're surrounded by people in your discipline who know disciplinary skills. Reaching out and saying, you know, here's a skill set I really need to develop, would you be willing to help me learn it? So you can probably see where Kermin and I are trying to encourage you is to think about where you have gaps and needs, and to not just accept that you have those, but to be very intentional and proactive about filling those gaps. And most people really love to share what they know. They love to help other people. Not everyone, you'll get some no's, but a lot of times we aren't sure that people need help with something, especially if it's concrete. But it's going to start with you having to think about what you need. I'm going to be much more responsive to someone who comes up to me and says, here's the specific thing I need, versus someone saying, can you just be a mentor to me and help me out? It doesn't mean I don't want to be their mentor, but it's so much easier if they ask me for something concrete. Kermin or Giovanna or Monica, would you like to add anything to that? And I know we'll get to talking about the programs in a minute.
No, I think you covered all of it well. I mean, I think, you know, you might not be able to identify somebody that you know of right away, but I think if you know specifically what areas you'd like more feedback on or more training on or connections with, then, you know, you can ask around your peers, your current mentors, your advisors, and you know, start getting those ideas, and then it's up to your networking proactivity to start developing those relationships.
Thank you. Kermin?
Yes, I just want to point something out that, I mean, I have done an activity with Monica in the past at SACNET that is actually about assessing your network. So I think it would be a good idea for maybe Monica and Giovanna to actually do that later with this group. So that way they can identify people in the different areas to make sure that they are assessing their network and where to find other mentors. So I like that activity at all. So.
Yeah, we sometimes talk about building mentoring maps and kind of seeing who's playing what roles and things like that. I think that would be a great activity for the group. I think it's a fantastic suggestion. I think, Monica and Giovanna, we've left you with lots of sessions for future ideas, hopefully not more than you can handle.
I think particularly for the networking map, I think we can at least send that to the students. I mean, we'd have to look at the schedule to see if we can fit it somewhere, but we can definitely send the sheet. And I think it'd be helpful for people to kind of sit down and map things out.
Great. Any comments or questions or concerns about kind of finding mentors? And I know the hardest part is it's pretty easy to acknowledge you want to do that. It's harder to actually go out and do it. And you'll send out the map. Great. All right, so what we wanted to then leave you with is, you know, networking, finding those mentors and some resources to do that. So just to kind of contextualize networking, I find this kind of useful is we often hear about networking in order to find mentors, but there's actually different kinds of networks. So when you're thinking about building your networks, sometimes it's helpful to think about what kind of support you're trying to build around you. So some is operational, like I need people to help me with a specific task. Some of it's developmental. I need someone to help me grow. Some of it's very strategic. I need this person because they have access to these other people or these opportunities. So I just raised this because I think it's important. One level of thinking about things is what we just did a couple minutes ago, is what are your specific needs? And if they're not being met, first identifying those and then thinking about who you could ask to meet those needs. The other is thinking about kind of these bubbles of networks. So do you have people around you that can help you with tasks? Do you have people around you that can help you develop? Do you have people around you that help you be strategic? And that will take a career. It'll take a long time to build that in your career. It might take the lifetime of your career. But it's something to try to keep in the forefront of your mind as you start to think about how you're building support around you. So one thing, and it got mentioned in the chat, that I wanted to introduce you to is NRMN, which is the National Research Mentoring Network. And I'm one of the PIs for this particular grant, and can I see just by a show of thumbs up or thumbs down if you've heard of NRMN before? Great, and Luis is part of it. Great, and Giovanna, did you want to say something while people are voting?
Oh no, I was just raising my hand to say I've heard of it.
Okay, great. So it looks like some people have heard of it. Looks like one person's actually engaged in it, and one person's down, and Marcos volunteers. Great. So NRMN has a lot of programs, and I'll talk to you about some of those programs. But one in particular that I want to raise now is it actually is a platform for mentoring and networking. So it has a Facebook-like platform called My NRMN, in which anyone who's signed up on the platform can be seen and can be invited to be part of a conversation with someone. So you might be looking for somebody, I'll just make it up, who works on the East Coast and is in your discipline, or wanting to talk to another woman who's at a certain career stage. You can reach out and start a conversation with them on this Facebook-like platform. You can also share documents. You can form groups. So for example, this whole group could form a group if they wanted. The other thing is guided virtual mentorships. This is actually, it's kind of like a match.com, although I don't like to use that term necessarily, but this is where you can sign up. There's quite an extensive profile you fill out. Mentors fill it out too, and you, as a mentee, you would be matched with somebody. You'd have 3 choices. You'd select one, and then a series of prompts would be sent to you on a regular schedule that would suggest topics for you to discuss that would help you in your relationship. And you engage with this person for 4 months on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. And then there's all these training opportunities on the platform as well. And we've had a huge partnership with iBiology and Monica. And I won't go through all the training. I'll show you a slide later. But this is a platform that you could use to build your network out. I don't know if, Luis, do you want to share your experience? I don't want to put you on the spot, but since you've done this, been part of this, did you want to share anything about it?
Sure. It was super easy. I just created a profile in the webpage, and I put my interest, what I'm expecting to do when I finish my career, my graduate school. And then I love it because the website matches you with potential mentors. And I decided to write to Maria Munches, that she works in Genentech, and actually we met at SAGNAS conference last year, and she remembered me, and it was great the coincidence. So, and actually she's interested more or less in the things that I want to do, and I was able to forward her some opportunities as well that I knew about. And yeah, I love it. We agreed to meet in SAGNAS this year if I go, and yeah, it was a great experience. And also I told her that I want to do an internship there when I pass my quals, and of course I need to go through the application process and everything, but she definitely will be a contact. She told me to let her know when I'm applying so she can help me with everything. So
I just wanted to share that Gracia and I actually met through a match on NRMN. We talked for a couple of months, and that's actually how she found out about YCA. I can't hear.
Thank you for sharing that, Chris. Are you back?
Thank you.
Okay.
Wonderful. So yeah, so this is free. It's available. It may, if it works for you, that would be great. You can sign up through nrmn.net. It's actually nrmnnet.net, and but it's easy to find if you just look for NRMN. So I just wanted to also tell you a little bit more about NRMN, and then turn it over to Giovanna and Monica, who are also going to talk a little bit about YCA and how it can help build your network. So the goals of NRMN are really to help enhance the size, quality, and diversity and productivity of the biomedical workforce. And I just talked to you a little bit about our activities in increasing matching and linking of mentors and mentees. We also provide lots of training for mentors, grantsmanship, coaches, career coaches, and mentees. And so what you're experiencing today is some of the training that we built for trainees of your career stage. It's just a little piece of it, but that's the kind of work we do. We also try to link you to resources and career development opportunities, and iBiology has been a great partner for that. And then also promoting the value of mentoring, as you've heard us talk about today. And so this is just, again, to show you those programs. This is the website when you come on the home page for your own program, your MyNRMN, which is that Facebook-like function, the guided virtual mentorship, which is the matching and all the training components, and how our 4 goals lay on these. And I won't go through all of these, but this is basically the map of all the programs available. So there are the ones I told you about in matching and linking, all of the training programs and webinars, and we also have a huge ambassador program, and how the different career stages that we're addressing and where programs are. So the green mean they're available, and the yellow just mean that we're working on them, and we hope to bring them to you soon. If you have any questions, we're happy to answer them about NRMN via email after this as well. Yes, Andre Vaz, she is from your institution, and she is actually one of the associate directors of one of the big program cores for NRMN. I get to work with her a lot, and Kermin and I actually were in Puerto Rico doing mentor training for that part of her NRMN program. When were we there, Kermin? I can't remember what month we were there last year.
That
We
was
traveled
November.
Yes. So that was wonderful to be there and to meet lots of mentors who participated in a lot of training. And Giovanna's, yeah, there's a wonderful leadership program for more senior folks called Promise that she's participating in. So I encourage you to check it out. Lots of career opportunities. So I'm going to pass things on over to Giovanna or Monica. I'm not sure which of you want to talk about this or both.
I can go ahead. So we just wanted to remind you guys that as you're identifying which areas you'd like to expand your professional network in, or which skills you might want to connect with more people or develop mentoring relationships to develop, Ciencia Puerto Rico is actually another good resource for you to find people that you could connect with that, you know, could help you, inform you about different careers, or can serve as additional people to add to your network. So just wanted to go over briefly how you can do this. You all have accounts on Ciencia Puerto Rico. If you're logged in, you can access the advanced member search, and that allows you to search for experts or members based on any different parameters you might think of. So institution, geography, career type, training stage, if you're interested in perhaps connecting with postdocs or other graduate students, field of study, job titles, and, you know, many other features. Once you, you know, if you do a search, you'll get a list of people that meet those criteria, and also a map of where they're located. And then you can visit their profile and send them a private message to, you know, request to have a 15-minute chat to learn more about what they do at, you know, their company, or, you know, to try to connect over email. You could even invite them to actually join you on NRMN and become part of a more guided mentoring program. So just wanted to mention that. I know we've been having one-on-one conversations, and in some cases we might point you in this direction. So I just wanted to give you a little bit more of a visual guide about how you could do that. I don't know if anybody has would like to share if they've used Ciencia Puerto Rico to find contacts. But if not now, you know how to do it.
Great, thanks so much. Any comments or questions about that? All right, thank you so much. So I think you can see that, you know, we just want to bring to you a lot of resources so that can help you expand your network so that we can make it a little easier for you, since we're promoting that that's an important thing to do. And if those don't work for you, you know, Kermin and I are now part of your network. Well, Kermin may have already been, but now I'm part of your network. So you can reach out to me, and that would be great. So I think that is all we had for today. We're here. We have a couple more minutes if people have questions or comments. I want to give a special thanks to Bruce Buren again, because he was so nice to let me use a bunch of slides. And we are happy to answer any questions. Kermin, any parting words until we open it up for questions?
Well, hi again. Thank you for being here on a Saturday. That actually speak a lot of you and your desire to be successful in your career. So I applaud you for being here on a Saturday. I know that you can be at the beach and doing other stuff, but you really are focusing in your career. So that is actually great. So as Chris mentioned, you know, I'm also here to help you out. So some of you, I interact with you. Others are new to me. So feel free to contact me. I posted my email in the chat room. So we're here to help you out. And Monica and Giovanna also have my contact information. So I will be more than happy to follow up with any one of you if you need help with something. Thank you for being here.
Great. Any final questions or comments, or Giovanna or Monica, any parting words before folks start to leave?
And I would also like to point out that you will receive an evaluation later. So when you see an email coming from, is that coming from Kim directly or from Qualtrics?
It'll be coming from me, yes.
Oh,
so,
from Giovanna, okay. Yeah, so don't forget to answer that survey. So because we really want to hear your feedback about this session, and if you like it or not, and how we can improve it.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Chris and Kermin. Thank you so much. This was incredibly useful and enlightening, even for me. I think we covered a lot of great strategies and techniques. And thanks all of you that were able to participate and spend the time and interact and share your own experiences. Those are very important. All right, everybody. Monica, if there's anything you want to say, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to echo your words. Thank you so much, Chris and Kermin, for this wonderful workshop, all of the wonderful, amazing resources you shared, and for all of the work that you're doing in the mentoring space. I get to work with them in a variety, wearing a variety of hats, and it's just amazing what you're doing. So it's really been great to have you with us.
All right, well, everyone have a wonderful rest of your Saturday. I hope that you're not working too hard.
All right.